And we have Dana-Farber is well known for their breaking work on the African continent. And today, for sure, we have let me see, Professor Tim Rebeck, who will be anchoring this discussion for today. He is a professor of cancer prevention at the Alfred T.H. Chan School of Public Health and at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And he has studied the etiology and prevention of cancer with emphasis on cancer disparities and global health. And I have worked personally with him when I was a little girl. Not that I'm saying anything on ACLI when I first met him long time ago in I believe that was in Rwanda, and I've had the pleasure to work with him peripherally. And of course, we have Tim Dyer Fadelu, who is a very good friend of mine. And unfortunately, we would not be having our chill today, but of course, his work will be well covered. So, again, join me to welcome our team for today. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Abiola. Great to see you. I'm very proud of your amazing accomplishments since we've gotten to know each other. And I just wanted to mention Mohammed Jallo is also here today as part of our presentation. You'll hear from him as well, and from Dio. Ashil Manarakiza had been planning to come, but he is sick and not able to, so we'll take over for him. But thank you very much for this great opportunity to present about the work that we're doing. And I put, Dana-Farber was the one who was invited, but this is really, again, a global initiative. This is something that involves a lot of people. What the unit that we're talking about is a newly formed unit at Dana-Farber called the Center for Global Health Equity that I direct, and Dio is the associate director. And we have a number of new initiatives that are bringing together all of the global health activities at Dana-Farber and including some of the Harvard systems. So we'll tell you a little bit about some of those activities that we're working on right now, and really looking forward to hearing your comments and about some of the things that we're doing, and to welcome you to participate if you're able to. So this new center thinks about how what we do here changes lives everywhere. That's actually a theme for Dana-Farber, but we have incorporated that into the everywhere, into really thinking about global health, global cancer. So our vision is a world where cancer outcomes are not determined by where a person lives. And so we're really thinking about how to bring the best possible research, education, and care to people, even who are living in lower resource areas. Our mission is to reduce global cancer inequities in prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and care at all stages of the cancer continuum. And we build this on three pillars: research and development, education and training, and clinical care capacity building. And we'll talk about a few of these, not all of the things that we're doing, but many of the things that we're starting to build in our global activities in this Center for Global Health Equity. All of this is focused around capacity building, and we have 5 fundamental values that we reflect: one of equity, global equity, collaboration between north-north, north-south, and south-south collaborations, innovation, particularly innovation that is amenable toward developing activities, clinical activities that promote cancer health across the world, particularly in Africa, compassion, and humility. So the values that we show, or that we try to reflect in all of the work that we do. So our values, just so I can say these again, we are committed to ensuring that our research and care efforts result in equitable cancer outcomes for all individuals, no matter where they live. We build meaningful and enduring partnerships, I'll talk about in a second and give you some examples. Our work embraces bold risks to achieve a profound global impact. That is to say that when we work in some of these places that are low resource, that have a legacy of under-resourced activities, we need to take bold steps to really leapfrog from where we have been to where we want to be. we dedicate ourselves to addressing the cancer needs of underserved populations worldwide. And we value and learn from the insights and expertise of our global partners. And we certainly have a lot of experience working with the incredible people in Africa, for example, who are amazingly thoughtful, hardworking, and we have a lot to learn from those collaborators as we do from other collaborators, no matter where they are. So our goal again is to create meaningful and enduring partnerships. And some of the dots on this map, Dana-Farber is up there in the northeastern United States, but we've developed some meaningful enduring partnerships with partner institutions around the world. And you can see a lot of our work is focused around Africa because many of us who lead this program have done work in Africa, but we're also interested in the Middle East, in parts of Asia, Central America. And our goal really is to create partnerships that will develop long-term relationships and build capacity in these centers. So we've really focused on specific partnerships that we think will have a meaningful and enduring impact. The partnerships are also intended to be bidirectional, meaning we travel back and forth, we interact back and forth, but partnerships are driven by our partner needs and goals in other parts of the world. So the science is driven by local public health or clinical needs, the education the same, and so our work is really bidirectional, but driven by what our partners on the ground internationally are value and prioritize. So let me just give you a couple of examples. Going quickly, I'm going to talk about the African Oncogenetics Initiative, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our prostate cancer initiatives and our educational programs. This is the section that Ashiel was originally going to speak on, but because he's sick, I'll just go through this. So a number of the people on this call, Dio, Mohammed, a number of other people have been heavily involved in this as well. So the African Oncogenetics Initiative really reflects a lot of the values that I talked about earlier. We're trying to do something bold and innovative. We're trying to improve cancer care around the world. And so we've come up with a team and have met a number of times now over the last few years to build these training, clinical, and research partnerships around cancer clinical genetics. So the goal of this network is to establish a network of African institutions and international partners to design and implement cancer clinical genetic strategies in Africa. And I won't go into the detail of this, but I think it's clear that cancer clinical genetics, molecular genetics, germline genetic testing, targeted therapies are a standard part of clinical care for oncology around the world. And there is no good reason why that can't become a part of cancer clinical care in Africa. The reasons, of course, are cost, resources, capacity, but I think we all feel very strongly that these activities, these opportunities should be available to cancer patients in Africa as they are in other parts of the world. So this is a tall order, of course, but we've begun this by creating educational opportunities for specialists, though that is those people who will practice cancer clinical genetics, but also generalists, oncologists, general practitioners, so that they can begin to understand and recognize genetic syndromes and understand how to refer appropriately. We're definitely developing clinical capacity around genetic testing and counseling, the risk assessment, monitoring, prevention, early detection, and treatment strategies. So obviously doing genetic testing doesn't have value unless we can also act on that information. And so clearly this is a very comprehensive problem that doesn't just involve genetics sequencing, but it involves the entire spectrum of clinical care. And also a lot of this will involve research on a lot of different levels to build the knowledge base that's required to make sure this happens in an appropriate way. So we've learned already that there's substantial infrastructure already. And I got on the right-hand side, there are a few people who are part of our group, Ashil Rokayan Day in Dakar, Yosser Hamdi in Tunis, Palm Dom in Cameroon, Priska Adejumo in Nigeria, and many, many others. But there are a lot of people that have built this expertise. There also is a number of biotech opportunities around around the continent, just a couple of which we've listed here. Bioinformatics has been developed to do the processing of data, the use of data, and there are beginning to be genetic counseling programs and opportunities that we can build on. So we're not starting from scratch. We're starting building on a base that's very already pretty sophisticated. We have started a steering committee of many of the names that I've just listed, also including Fumio Lapati at the University of Chicago, to sort of steer this group. But the group is open to all, and we're starting to develop our activities. For example, we had a training program for non-specialists that is online at africanoncogenetics.org, our current website. We've had over 1,000 participants in 59 countries enrolled in this short course that allowed us to sort of give the basics about cancer clinical genetics. We're now spending time thinking about how to expand this so that this can be used by non-specialists in Africa. We're also, as I said, thinking about a readiness assessment to understand where things stand. This is being led by Sheil and Yoser and Dio and a number of people, both for clinicians and for patients. We're thinking about the implementation of Africa-centric protocols and then the evaluation and implementation of these activities across the continent. And we have a number of research projects. This is a paper that Ashil led that I won't go into detail, but really characterizing in about 400 breast and prostate cancer cases in Kigali, but now expanded across the African continent to understand the germline genetic susceptibility distribution and thinking about how to use this information to better characterize pathogenic variants and create risk models. So again, a lot of research being developed out of this network. So our deliverables will be to have protocols, experts who can implement these protocols, implementation of these protocols, and think about how the health systems will develop to improve and integrate the management of genetic information into prostate and breast and other cancers. So that's something that we're going to be developing and welcome everybody who's interested in this topic to work with us to make sure that this can happen in Africa. So with that, let me introduce Mohammed Jallo, who is at the Hôpital Général Idrissa Pouye in Dakar, who's been our long-term collaborator understanding prostate cancer in Africa. And so let him give some overview about what we're developing there, which includes, again, training, clinical capacity, and research building. So, Mohammed.
Thank you, Tim, for initiating all this and the network Men of African Descent Carcinoma of the Prostate is a very good example of what can be achieved in any global oncology initiative geared toward equity and looking at a very interesting and a very typical example of disparity, the prostate cancer in men of African descent. So, and again, it's about training. We'll touch about on that later. The clinical aspect, how we're going to do research that influence the practice. And again, research to understand the biology, but also the prognosis of prostate cancer worldwide. And as you can see here, many African centers are involved from west to south, and you also have the eastern part of sub-Saharan Africa. Next slide. So the major question are why are prostate cancer incidence and mortality elevated in Black men? We know that the prostate cancer is at a higher risk in Black men. Is it because of the biology and genetics? And we have started understanding some genetic underlying factors that explain the susceptibility to prostate cancer. But there is also biology, the interaction of those two and the environment that we'll mention also explain the risk factors that we have in this population and making it a very good disparity. There is also some idea regarding the residents, and that's why we'll be talking later about the geospatial factors, environment, not only the economic environment, but also the geographic environment that encompass the access to healthcare and many other factors. Social determinant is also important. And all those the social determinant and access to healthcare can have an impact on screening and early detection, which can explain in part why prostate cancer is diagnosed at a very advanced stage. So a very diverse approach, a very different expertise to understand prostate cancer in this part of the world. So, and the question is what is the best way to detect prostate cancer early in Black men? And this is a big challenge because the earlier you detect it, the better chances you have to choose the appropriate treatment modality. Are we going to look at active surveillance, or are we going to choose a treatment with intent to cure, knowing that the earlier the treatment, the cheaper it's going to be, and the best chance to have at least a good quality of life. But we now have started understanding that early treatment can also have even if it is minimal, an impact in survival. Or can we develop and implement intervention that will lower prostate cancer incidence, morbidity, and mortality in Black men? And it's too early to say, but once we know all the factors, there will be a good, large room for all the genetic manipulation that can potentially impact the incidence, but also the severity of the disease and mortality. Next slide. So as you can see here, there are many different centers. In the left side, you see all the kind of centralized resources that we have at DFCI for the bioinformatics, central data repository at DFCI also. We have the US Biobank at Cornell, tumor gene expression, Moffitt. That is very important for us on our current study where we're looking at the tissue to understand better the environment of the cancer and the interaction that the gene can have with the environment of the cancer cells. We also have the Africa Biobank at CPGR. So those different centers have different expertise and different intervention, whether it is tumor tissue, clinical data, or DNA. But now, if you look at the right side, that's where you see the twin collaboration. For example, here we have the collaboration between IFRU, my center, and DFCI. We have the collaboration between DFCI and 37 military hospital in Ghana, Kolbu Teaching Hospital, also with Stanford University. We have a UCH with Albert Einstein Center, another center in Nigeria with DFCI, it's in Abuja. We also have a collaboration between DFCI and Cape Town. We have other collaboration with Johannesburg, and all this is put together just to mention that it is a real focus for the researchers to address this big disparities. And we have different funding. We finished the UO1 funding, and we are now having many papers coming out looking at the genetic susceptibility, but also tumor genomic. Our ongoing RO1 research is still continuing the genetic and regulatory aspect of prostate cancer. But the new thing is the histopathology to look at the molecular signatures, but also the tissue and modification that can occur in prostate cancer. So we mentioned these centers that are involved, but there are new centers that are emerging, like Calabar in Nigeria and other centers in Ghana, in Eastern Africa. And these are those we know about, Kigali in Rwanda, and also other centers like in Cote d'Ivoire, in Cameroon. We are regularly interacting with people who would like to to be involved in this research. Just to say that this is very important and a very focused research potential. Next slide. And again, to make all this work, we have a working groups that are very important. Most of the work are being done in the working group. Also, we have a monthly investigative meeting. We have a pathology working group reflecting on protocols and how to make the pathology practice better, not only for the research, but for the clinical practice. Also, we have a genomic working group We have a geospatial working group. I mentioned earlier the geographic component. When what we mean by geography is not only the geographic accessibility, but also the environment that it implies and all these economic aspects that can explain why people have access or not, why people would go for early detection or not, and how all these components can impact the clinical presentation and disease prognosis. We also have behavior and survivorship, which is very important. This is well recognized in developed countries, but is still under considered in sub-Saharan Africa, as we'll see it later when we'll be looking at the profile of the trainees that we have in our training programs. The nutrition is also very important, not only as a determinant. We know the relation between fatty diet, animal fat diet, and the risk of prostate cancer, but we know also any cancer has some is impacted by the type of nutrition. The clinical working group is also very important. That's the one I'm chairing. And this is trying to look at the different protocol that we need. And this been very active in the UO1 and RO1 to design the protocol that we need clinically, but also trying to look at the clinical characteristic of prostate cancer, how things are evolving since we've started doing the research compared to what is already known in terms of the presentation at the time of disease, etc. But we also are looking at influencing the screening and also producing guidelines to move forward. Next slide. So this is where we are in terms of data collection. More than 7,000 currently genotype cases in control. We have more than 1,000 tumors that are being studied using Decipher. We have different SNPs that are being addressed, more 1 million and a half, 1.5 million SNPs. And if we take into consideration the imputation, we can have as much as 30,000 SNPs, 30 million SNPs. And we also have data for whole exome sequencing. So as you can see, and we also have data on risk factors, diet, nutrition, screening, and treatment. All these will contribute to doing a whole wide association studies in different ways, developing PREs, population genetics, ancestry, evolutionary genetics. And this is very important because probably it is one of the biggest cohort of data that can be used for future research done concomitantly in the framework of a different research project. Next slide.
So thank you, Mohammed. I just want to introduce Dio Fadulu, who's going to talk now about education and training, some of the activities, and then we'll come back to one particular activity that Mohammed will lead again. So Dio, please.
Thank you very much, Tim. So the next few slides, or the next 3 slides, will highlight some 3 specific initiatives under our education and training umbrella. So the first initiative is a seminar series, which we are doing in coordination with multiple centers. The centers are listed here. So MD Anderson, University of Pennsylvania, MGH UCSF Memorial. It's sort of a similar principle to why this current conference we're on exists, which is bringing people together. So this is an example of a session that we had in June, and it's a monthly conference that is open to anyone to attend, where folks from... Okay, sorry about that. Someone was unmuted. We're not necessarily only folks from these institutions, but we invite speakers to talk about leading things that they're doing in the global oncology space. There was a session that happened yesterday where Dr. Lohr talked about the Indiana University and AMPATH extended collaboration. So next slide. And another initiative that we're currently working on, and this is something a lot of people have grappled with over the years, and there are some existing global oncology fellowship programs, and there are a variety of experiences that people have in the global oncology space, but our hope was to develop something that was integrated into the fellowship programs for medical oncologists as well as pediatric oncologists within our programs here in Boston at Dana-Farber. But in service of that, we're also developing a global oncology online virtual course, which I will talk about. So ASCO, as a lot of you might be aware, has put together an academic global oncology task force. And one of the most recent publications from this task force is highlighted on the slide, which is a list of competencies that were proposed that could be the basis for doing a global oncology training program. Obviously, ASCO is a global organization, but a lot of the training things that they do is focused on trainees within the US, and the competencies that were proposed here are really geared towards global oncology trainees in the US, but something that certainly can serve as a basis for programs in other places as well. So for the virtual course that we're developing, we're also doing that in concert with a variety of partners who are listed here. So these are institutions that already have substantial experience in global oncology. And I think many of these institutions are going to be presenting on this seminar series that we're on. And we were hoping to pull everyone together and get suggestions and ideas from everyone on developing a course that could be available to trainees from multiple institutions. And from our consultations with all of these partners, what we came up with was what we'll call a global oncology practice, a global oncology, sort of a global oncology practice course, which will be a mix of a virtual component and which will be asynchronous, where people will be able to participate in courses, in lectures that are pre-recorded, as well as discussion sessions. And we're actively working on a curriculum for this. And this is something that we'll share more broadly in the coming months. And this is a course series that we envision starts in the fall later this year. So next slide. Oh, sorry, in the fall of next year. This is also another initiative, which is a series of virtual courses that we're developing, which we hope is housed at Dana-Farber and is open to people from all over. We've already mentioned some of these courses. So for example, there's some that are already existing that have been developed. One is the oncogenetics course, which Tim mentioned earlier, which is it's a series of lectures that has been taken by over 1,000 people already, and we hope to expand on that. Another course that also already exists is a geospatial analysis course. And as Mohammed had indicated and mentioned previously, there is the need to not only understand how this geospatial aspects impact access to care, but also how it impacts potential risk of getting cancer. So we have a course that was developed in conjunction with faculty member at Rutgers University, which is also open for folks to take. The STARS program is going to be the focus of the next few slides, but I'll mention that there are some other courses that are currently in development, and the hope is to have home where all of these virtual courses are available and are freely available for people interested in global oncology, not just in the US and Africa, but all around the world. So I think that's it for my slides. I'll pass it back to Tim.
Great, thank you, Dio. And let's focus in on one of those programs that we just talked about, and that is the STARS program, Strategic Training for Achievements for Research Success. And I'd like to pass it over to Mohammed to go through this program.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Dio, for the introduction. The STAR program is like stars, as you can see, bright and very beautiful. The idea, and I think we were very fortunate to have the leadership and team and the opportunities offered by the NCI to give this opportunity while we're doing research, but to also have a good legacy in Sub-Saharan Africa by training the next generation of researchers, but also a project manager, with the understanding that the two of them will be working together. Next slide. So yeah, this training, as I mentioned, interests PIs, young researchers, who are typically doctoral level investigators who will be trained to demonstrate leadership in independent and collaborative research. Clearly, those PI candidates will have an idea, research idea, a draft proposal, and the program offer them a unique opportunity to be trained from for all the aspect of a good proposal until the end, where the proposal is good enough to be submitted for grant funding. And in the same way, project manager, for those interested in gaining skill in project management to be able to support the conduct of research. So this is very important, because if we train one of them without the other, then there will be a gap. Next, please. So the successful candidate should ideally be influenced by his commitment, his readiness, but the institutional environment and commitment, this is very important, and that is why we need someone in the institution to sponsor the candidate to demonstrate that the conditions are there to pursue the career. And there also need to be a mentor. The mentor can be from Sub-Saharan Africa or some other part of the world. The idea is to have all these different requirement to ensure a successful training and a good career later on. Next. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the timeline. Each cohort is trained for 1 year, and this year we are finishing the 3rd cohort, and we are about to start the 4th cohort. And as you can see here, the first 2 to 3 months will be a group where you have both PIs and project manager. They have the same training, webinars, and some exchanges, and because they need to know the same amount of requirement and knowledge to be able to interact and initiate training. After these 2 first months, there will be a different track. For the PIs, they will have project aims and design, mentor assignment until the 5th month. Then there will be structured project development, peer critic, mentor interaction, scientific exchange, all those things that are needed to shape the proposal well, and that will be culminating with a mock study section before the grant is ready to be submitted for application. And at the same period, we have the project manager track with that will have mentor assignment, case-based didactics, and at the end of all this, they will take the KPM exam, which is very important, and some of them even are able to do the project management certification, which is a very great achievement. And as you see, all this training will be monthly track-specified professional development series. There will be different experts bringing their lectures, and for the PI track, after each talk, each lecture, they are expected to modify and improve their proposal in order to make it complete and successful. Next. So this is the Promote Africa curriculum that we said both PI and project manager will undergo for the first 2 months. Uh, uh, Essentially, we look at ethical aspect of research, regulatory aspect, logistic aspect, and fiscal. And clearly, we know what needs to be done from the benchmarking in the developing countries. But the idea is to be able to have people adapt those regulations to the local environment, but take all the requirement to be able to be successful. Next slide. Okay, so and I was mentioning earlier the profile, the trainee interest. You can see in the left column here all these different profile of those who are involved in the training so far. 84 trainees, and you see in the left in the right side the different countries that are involved. Gradually, most African countries are being involved, especially in West Africa, Eastern Africa, and also in Southern Africa. Next. So what have we accomplished so far? So in both track, 100% of them obtained project management oversight and education certification. For the PI track, 94% prepared grant proposal for extramural funding, and 75 of them of cycle one from the first year have received grant funding, which is very great. And for the PM track, 76 of them passed the CAP PM exam, and 93% obtained best practice in project management DFCR certification. Next. Okay, so now this is the timeline for the cycle 4 application that is starting now, and you see here December, and all this will culminate with the start of the training in May 2025. Next.
That's it, yeah.
So to you, Tim.
Great. Thanks. Well, I just want to emphasize that the STARS program training is on now, due in about 3 weeks, the letters of intent, and in February 7th, the applications are due. So we really encourage people, based on what Muhammad just presented to you, to apply for this program, whether it's for the project management track or the PI track, because we feel like we've created a good program. And we feel like there's a lot of opportunity for people who are interested in developing research careers in cancer for Africa, to really enhance that training through what we've presented here. So please keep in mind the inquiries can be made on the contact at African Cancer Stars, but the website, africancancerstars.org, has all the information you need for the applications. But please do reach out if you or your colleagues are interested in participating. So then, as I said in the beginning, we are really developing a number of different activities through Dana-Farber. And we've only presented 3 here, the African Oncogenetics Network, MADCAP, and the STARS program, but and the educational opportunities that accompany these projects. So there's many other things that are being developed right now. And because this new Center for Global Health Equity at Dana-Farber now has funding, it has the opportunity to develop new educational projects. We are going to be funding pilot grants that build capacity for research in Africa, particularly between Dana-Farber and African institutions. And we're going to enhance the clinical care capacity building that's been going on for many years. And so just suffice it to say that this is a new opportunity for those of you who are interested in collaborating with Dana-Farber and the Harvard system, to reach out to us and think about how we can enhance your career activities, your research plans, etc. So if you are interested, please contact us. The email is dfci_globalhealth@dfci.harvard.edu. And so let's just stop there so we have time for questions and discussions. Let me stop sharing, and I see that there are some questions out there. So please let me maybe go through some of those. Okay, good. So I mentioned Ahmed Al-Zawawi, hello, is got the ASCO Global Oncology Implementing Science, and there are a number of things going on there too. So please, Abiola, do you want to take questions? Do you want us to discuss anything more about what we've just presented?
Sure. Thank you so much for taking over this hour. Thank you for your presentation and enlightening us today. It has been very, very impactful. So I have a question, and I mean, as everyone is thinking about their question or comments, the previous speakers of the previous institution has given their talks, and something has always been consistent. And we know that we work in different African countries, and for every country that we go to, we have to get IRB. So, I mean, the thought is going to be that if we do have an Afrocentric IRB um, approval, it's going to make our work easier, faster, more collective. So, is this something that you've been working about or on something that you've been thinking about as far as us getting some central place or where we can get approval and we can be more inclusive? And if it's something you've been doing, can you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, we've been working in a number of different levels to try to understand how to streamline and make more efficient the research process. So this includes IRBs, but it also includes material transfer agreements, data use agreements, a lot of different regulatory paperwork that's required. So let me just start by saying for our MTA and DUA activities, we have for the MADCAP network, for example, created a centralized process where everybody signs on to the same agreement, and that allows us to share data across our different centers in Africa and the US. It provides us with a common framework around which data sharing can happen. And this is really important because obviously, when we want to develop our collaborative efforts, and let's say the center in Dakar has collected data that the center in Accra wants to use for a research study, having a central and a common platform set of agreements and regulatory facilities allows us to make that much more streamlined. And so we've been able to do that. And so if people are interested in knowing how we did that, we're glad to share that information with you. With respect to IRBs, it's been much more difficult because the IRB and all IRBs are local. So the IRB institute are determined by the local, local guidelines as well as national guidelines in each of the countries. So what we've done is created common consent forms, common IRB protocols that everyone can use for as a template. But then, of course, what happens is that each of the IRBs locally then has to approve those. And so national and local regulations have to be implemented on top of these common template IRB protocols. So we're always glad to share our template protocols, our consent forms, our things like that. They are actually on our MADCAP website, for example, and others. So those are always available as a template, but then they go through local approval. And I think that's the sort of the barrier that everyone faces because you can't get around those local approvals. In the United States, obviously, there's been things like the commercial IRBs, the Western IRB, and things like that. And that hasn't happened to my knowledge in Africa yet. It could, but I think that's a step that would require a better understanding and a better collaboration of people who are doing this work, or proving IRBs across the continent in different places. But models like that do exist. The other thing that we've used sometimes is that you can one institution can serve as the IRB of record for another institution. So that requires that the IRB of record then is the one who is responsible for everything happening. And that sometimes works, but again, it has to be responsible for the local requirements. So for example, if an IRB in South Africa serves as the IRB of record, but the research is being done in Zimbabwe, they have to be sure that the regulations and requirements that are reflected in the ethics approvals for Zimbabwe are being met. And so that can be very difficult too. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of ways to go about this. So I don't know if that's helpful or if other people have experience, but.
Yeah, it seems to be everybody's experience. It seems. Abdara, you want to say something?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Abiola. And I think as much as there might be this wish for something that is centralized. The needs in each place are different, and it's in a way the IRB needs to be reflective of what that specific population values and needs, and I think that's a hard thing to really capture because the continent, as you know, is not monolithic. Even within one country, there are differences as well. So I think sort of similar to what Tim had mentioned, some places have a process of sort of a research committee, a local research committee, which sort of feeds into, say, like a national IRB, so maybe a national system for approval, and each institution sort of approves within their institution whether or not the project should take place. So that could be another strategy. But there certainly still needs to be local engagement and local involvement. And I think that's just the price to pay, personally. Yeah.
But having so common templates, common formats will help people get to a place where they maybe, they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time a new project comes along. And so I think that there are collaborative and educational tools that could make it easier for people to get through the IRB process. So that's something we should definitely discuss further.
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, and I think that this is the reason why we have this series where we all collaborate, and because this is becoming a need for us all. So I see Peter Kingham's question. Who I don't know if he wants to unmute himself and ask his question, but I can read it out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Hi, Peter.
Great presentation. Thanks for putting this together, Abiola. Yeah, my question was what have you learned from the STARS program now that you're a few years in? Because as the research programs grow and go on over time, the number of graduates grows, and it becomes challenging to meet everyone's needs as 5 become 10, become 15, become 30, become 40 people, and you're a couple of years out. So what have you learned from the STARS graduates a few years out, and how do you help them, or do they still need help and mentorship? What have you learned with STARS? And thanks again, great presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. We have over 80 trainees right now, and what we've learned from that is that all of these people are individuals, right? So there isn't one size that fits all. So exactly to your point, it's very difficult to give the bespoke, personalized guidance that for all 80 of our trainees. But I think that we've tried to do that by, first of all, during the formal training, the year in which they're training, is to set the foundation for this by creating mentorships, mentor relationships. Part of the training for our group is for them to travel to other institutions and build relationships and really spend a lot of time giving them the tools they need to maintain those relationships over time. And so everybody is a little different. Some of the people that we train are very engaged and continue to want to interact with us, want to collaborate with us, and that's great. Some of them are building their own collaborations based around the period they were training in, the mentorships and collaborations. And we've also created things like WhatsApp groups and other platforms which people can continue to discuss their research, their projects, their problems, and get advice from each other. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer interactions. And so again, I don't think there's a magic answer to your question, except that when you lay the foundation for people to talk with one another and to know how to find the information that they need, how to reach out to people, that goes a long way. because in the end, like we all are, they're independent scientists or project managers. They have to find their way, and we'll help them. But giving them the guidance is kind of the main, thing. So it's probably a non-answer to your question, but I think that's really how we've been thinking about it.
Thank
And I
you.
don't know. Yep.
Ask a question or maybe add something.
Yep.
With regards to pilot funding, and I think Tim, you had mentioned this, because many times I think it's sort of like you get the training and then are you able to get the funding either to do the project that you applied with or to do a future project. So to me, it feels that either uh, having available private pilot funding or supporting people in getting the first pilot funding to me feels like it's incredibly key.
Right. Learn by doing, for sure. Teresa, hi. In Nairobi has a question. How about the master's degree in genetic counseling? And that is something that, again, we can put you in touch with the people who have figured out how to generate these master's degrees. And I think the idea of an MSc in clinical research is really very valuable. Obviously, the local requirements for the institutions conferring master's degree or any degree, you have to start with talking to the institution about what it is that is required to create a degree program. And everybody's going to be a little different. Every institution is going to be a little bit different in what is required. But with the way we've done it, we haven't done the master's in genetic counseling was done by that group, and so I can certainly refer you to them to talk with how they did it. But in general, it's identifying the need. Why do you need this sort of thing, and creating an argument for the institution of why this is going to be valuable, why it's important. Sometimes they require that you demonstrate that it's fiscally viable. That is to say, how are people going to pay for this? Who's interested in it, having some idea of what the pool of applicants might be or the pool of trainees. Are you going to what is the size of the program? So the logistical pieces that will convince the institution that this is a viable and important undertaking for them to support, and to know about the costs and the administration and things like that. So that's one piece. And the second piece, of course, is the content. What is it that you're going to train people for? What is the curriculum? Are there courses? Do the courses exist? Do they need to be created? Because there's costs there for creating these courses. Are there core curriculum pieces that need to be either developed or will be used from the existing courses that exist in the university? So creating something new obviously takes a lot more energy and effort and cost than leveraging things that already exist. So probably you need to do some of both. And then creating are there going to be thesis requirements? Are there going to be research requirements? Are there, who are the course directors? Who are going to be the mentors for these trainees if they need to do research? So you can just imagine all the things that might be required, and to do that, outline it very clearly, but working with the institution all along so that you create the course, create the infrastructure that's going to be needed in the context you're working. So, go into more of that, and glad to sort of, reach out or, put people in touch with people who are doing this in other settings.
To come back to the question of Peter Kingham, I think this was a good debate of last week when we were meeting talking about research. I think it is important to recognize the protected time for research. But given that most clinicians are busy, and like myself, for example, having people who are trained and acknowledged and recognized and put in the team can help doing more clinical research. But for this to happen, there need to be a way to inform policymakers at the regional or sub-regional or whatever level, so that this is added, and probably that will be very helpful, and that will give more attractivity and more room for those people that are trained. And if they are trained and they join this team, that would be a very good opportunity to do more research with the clinicians.
Yeah. Thank you. And there's a question from Miriam. Hi, Miriam. And maybe Dio, you want to take this. It's about the plans to marry the global oncology program with local medical oncology, clinical oncology programs in Africa. And yeah, so maybe, I don't know if Dio, you want to take that
Yeah,
or
that's
Let me quickly insert something before you take that. And
okay.
also, you are the global oncologist that trained us that. I think that you should have a platform or something whereby we want to hear from the voices of the people that actually did the work, right?
Yeah,
You trained as global oncologists when everything was still blind. You tried some things worked, some things didn't work. And how did it help you to be where you are right now? So yeah. So I just
very
wanted
good.
to
Yeah.
plug that in.
Yeah, great questions. I think I think all in all, I would say the larger goal and the larger idea is there are partnerships and collaborations at different levels. So partnerships and collaborations between trainees who are physically within Africa, those who may not be physically within Africa most of their time, and on the faculty level and on all of that. I think there are
Okay,
there's certainly some practical challenges with the structures of how training programs currently exist. So, training programs, most training programs in the most oncology training programs in the US are fellowship-based programs. Some programs in Africa are residency-based programs. The requirements for what you need to do are somewhat different. But I think, if the central goal is improving global inequities, certainly the skill sets that you need are similar. So I think over time, instead of creating these things that are somewhat siloed and focused on one population, I'm perhaps thinking of things that are potentially available across the board. So I certainly agree with that idea. I think I don't think we're entirely there yet, just because we need to sort of function within the existing structures of some existing training programs. And we also need to convince people who are not necessarily interested in global oncology. So, for example, fellowship programs in the US, there are there's an agenda to the fellowship program, which is not necessarily global oncology. So convincing those leaders and the leaders of cancer programs in the US, I think is part of what we also need to do. So I don't know if I really answered the question, but I think it's certainly something, it's a challenging thing to really address and work on.
Yeah,
So I think you might also have some thoughts on this as well, Abiola. Sorry, Tim. Yeah.
No, I know we're at time, but I think this is an incredibly important topic for us to maybe this group to have a more of a conversation about, because it's a big undertaking, but it's critically important for the success of this work. So,
Yeah.
and I just note that Hervia in the chat as wants to join the WhatsApp group. We can provide more information about that, and other people who want to join in any of this, please just reach out to us and we'll make sure you get connected. But
Thank you so much. We have reached the top of the hour right now. And again, thank you for another beautiful presentation. And the purpose of this monthly series is for all of us to come together in the North American group and also to talk and meet with our African partners to talk about what we're doing on the continent, and learn from each other, collaborate and partner. So, which is pretty much the purpose of this series. And Northwestern will be presenting next month. I hope to see everybody. Please share this with your network. We need to have more attendance so that we can actually start moving together as a group, because we are going to achieve more together as a group, as a team. And we're going to keep this discussion going probably off network, off this session, but I will be calling it off. And then thank you so much, and see everybody next month. Happy holidays, happy travels for people that are traveling. Thank you enough. And thank you, team. Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Thank you, Dio. Bye-bye.